Time folded without a sound. When my paws touched the cold stone of Jerusalem, the air was thick with dust, incense, and promise. It was the early 12th century. The city was sacred to many, contested by all, and marked by ancient blood. I watched a world where faith and violence walked side by side, with no clear separation. The Crusades had opened deep wounds. Pilgrims crossed hostile lands to reach holy places, and many never returned. Roads were dangerous, not only because of bandits, but because of constant wars between empires of faith. Faith moved crowds, but it did not protect them. And where faith fails to protect, an urgent need for order and safety is born. There, for the first time, I heard the name that would reshape history. A small brotherhood formed to protect pilgrims. They were not rich, they were not powerful. They were men who had vowed poverty, chastity, and obedience, offering their own lives in exchange for a sacred ideal. Officially, they were known as the Militia of the Temple of Solomon, an order of poor fellow soldiers of Christ. They lodged near the site of the ancient Temple of Solomon, in that place of stone and memory. From that sacred ground, they took the name that would echo for centuries: Knights Templar. In that first moment, however, they were only tired men, armed with conviction and little else. I watched their faces. I saw no ambition in them. I saw raw, intense faith. I saw strict military discipline. I saw the strange and powerful fusion of deep religious devotion and relentless combat training. Something new was taking shape there. An order that refused to separate sword from prayer. In that early silence, no one could imagine that this small brotherhood would become one of the most powerful, wealthy, and feared institutions in all medieval Europe. But every great rise begins like this: discreet, functional, and profoundly underestimated. The Templars did not fight like ordinary mercenaries. They fought like men who believed that dying in battle meant true salvation. That conviction made them relentless. Where others retreated, they advanced. Where others hesitated, they stood firm and unshaken. The Church quickly recognized the value of this order. Popes granted unprecedented privileges, exemption from taxes, legal autonomy, direct submission to the Pope himself. No king ruled them. No feudal lord could command or claim them. Faith gave them unquestionable legitimacy. Discipline gave them operational efficiency. War gave them a reputation for invincibility. In just a few decades, the Templars were spread across Europe and the Middle East, guarding trade routes, strategic fortresses, and vital territories. But something else happened, something deeper. To sustain wars and dangerous journeys, they needed immense resources. They began to store wealth, manage donations from kings and nobles, and transport valuables with absolute security. They created a rudimentary, yet efficient and trustworthy financial system. A pilgrim could deposit gold in Paris and withdraw it in Jerusalem. Without fully realizing the slow transformation, the Knights of Christ became bankers of Christendom. They held the personal fortunes of kings, powerful nobles, and even the Pope himself. The personal poverty of each knight coexisted, paradoxically, with the institutional wealth of the order. And it was there that the seed of a deadly conflict was sown, because sincere faith inspires respect and devotion. But wealth inspires irresistible desire, and desire, when it grows in the heart of political power, turns devotion into an existential threat. I moved forward in time, inside that same story. Decades passed in silent march. Now the Templars possessed valuable lands, impregnable castles, strategic ports, and warships. They were an international network before such a concept even existed in political language. No frontier truly limited them. Kings depended on them for everything. For wars, for loans, for the logistics of long campaigns. Many owed them sums impossible to repay in gold, or land. Their debts were measured not only in precious metal, but in political power and influence. I watched the change in the eyes of rulers with a historian's precision. Where there had once been genuine gratitude, now there was cold calculation. Where there had been sincere respect, envy now corroded quietly. An order that answered only to a distant and inaccessible pope was far too inconvenient for ambitious monarchs. Among these ambitious kings, one stood out: Philip the Fair, King of France. A chronically indebted man, a cold and ruthless strategist, deeply disturbed by the Templars' absolute autonomy. He did not see defenders of the Christian faith. He saw an obstacle standing between him and total control. Philip urgently needed money to finance his constant wars. He needed absolute control over institutions within his realm. He needed to weaken the church in order to consolidate his own power. And the Templars stood exactly at the dangerous crossroads of those three incompatible interests. Nothing is more dangerous than a powerful institution that cannot be controlled by the state. A fall like that never begins with swords and open conflict. It always begins with narratives, with whispers, with the careful construction of suspicion. Rumors began to circulate among the people. Whispers of secret rituals in dark halls, of abominable heresies, of blasphemies against Christ. Accusations vague and elusive, yet repeated with obsessive insistence. Where there are no documents or proof, suspicion and fear are planted in the collective mind. People said the Templars denied Christ in their ceremonies, worshipped a mysterious severed head called Baphomet, practiced obscure and magical rites. No accusation was clear or consistent, but each one was shocking enough to stain reputations built over centuries. The faith of the common people is easily manipulated when wrapped in existential fear and moral panic. Philip knew this deeply. He did not need to prove anything at all. He only needed to sow doubt in the collective imagination, to unleash panic. The Pope hesitated to act directly. Many church leaders personally knew Templars and their unyielding discipline. But the political weight of France was far too great to ignore or openly challenge for long. Meanwhile, in royal halls, lists were being drawn up methodically. Names were written down with care. Fortresses were mapped with military precision. Properties were catalogued and valued. The machinery of the state moved forward in calculated silence. I watched all this with a familiar sense of historical inevitability. When pure faith, immense wealth, and absolute political power collide head-on, someone always falls. And it is rarely the guiltiest or the least innocent. It was Friday, the 13th of October in the year 1307. The strike was planned and executed simultaneously across all of France. Templar knights were arrested in their fortresses, seized in the streets, taken without resistance. There was no prior warning. There was no proper trial or legal process. Men who had protected kings and nobles for decades now found themselves chained like common criminals and heretics. Their possessions were immediately confiscated by the crown. Their sacred symbols were publicly profaned, destroying the mythic aura that had once surrounded them. The main charge was simple but devastating: heresy against the Christian faith. A crime that could justify almost any punishment the authorities desired, including slow death by burning, extreme torture, mutilation, and unspeakable suffering. Systematic torture was used to extract voluntary confessions. Under unrelenting and excruciating pain, words lose their meaning. Under the threat of death and despair, many confessed to crimes they had never committed, simply to make the agony stop. The public watched events unfold in shock and fear. The most powerful order in all of Christendom vanished in a matter of weeks. Not through open war or military defeat, but by coordinated royal decree. On that historic day, more than a military and religious order fell. The deep illusion that sincere faith alone can protect against the political machine of absolute power and greed also collapsed. Jacques de Molay, venerable Grand Master of the Templars, resisted as long as he could against the institutional machine closing around him. At first, he confessed under extreme torture and threat of death. Later, with a courage that still impresses, he publicly retracted his confession. Truth resurfaced when his pain briefly subsided, but the machinery of power was already moving with ruthless momentum. Retracted confessions did not interest the narrative of authoritarian rule. Only the initial confessions, extracted under torture, counted as written truth for the official record. Years passed in dark prisons, in repetitive interrogations, in complex political games between church and state. Under heavy French pressure, the order was formally dissolved by the Pope. On the 18th of March 1314, Jacques de Molay was burned alive on a small island in the River Seine, near Paris, silent, steadfast in his dignity, unbroken to the very end. They say that, before dying in the flames, he spoke a solemn curse against the Pope and the king who condemned him. Legend or not, both men died soon after. Clement Thaf in April of that same year, Philip in November 1314. History does not need the supernatural to be cruel beyond comprehension. Sometimes coincidence in timing is enough to feed legends that endure for centuries. Much has been said about hidden Templar treasures, gold that vanished into crypts, secrets preserved in remote strongholds, verifiable truth or romantic invention. The doubt remained unresolved for centuries. Some Templars escaped to distant lands before the mass arrests. Others strategically joined new religious orders to survive in plain sight. The institutional structure died, but fragments of its influence survived quietly. The myth grew exponentially with each passing century. Where clear historical answers are missing, fertile imagination takes root. And collective imagination is often far more powerful than any verifiable historical truth. But the true legacy of the Templars was not in missing gold or hidden vaults. It lay in the undeniable proof that religious institutions are also deeply vulnerable to the politics of absolute power. Sincere faith did not save them from the state's machinery. Their skill with the sword and their military reputation did not protect them from royal decrees. Obedience to the Pope did not absolve them from false accusations and unjust death. Political power decided their fate, and that alone was enough to erase them from official history for centuries. Until fragments of the truth began to surface again. I walked slowly among the ruins of old Templar fortresses scattered across Europe. Silent stones held their secrets. None of them told the full story of what had been lost. The fall of the Templars taught the world something simple and brutal. When an organization becomes too powerful and too independent, it becomes disposable to political power. It does not matter how sacred its original mission was. If it threatens the delicate balance of government power, it will be destroyed without hesitation or remorse. Faith was used as a political weapon of control. Justice was staged as a legal theater without truth. Historical truth itself was reduced to a minor, inconvenient detail, and the world went on its way, inexorably. It always does in the repetitive patterns of human history. I watched it all, as I always do, because a history never announces when it is going to repeat itself in new cycles. It simply changes names, symbols, and political justifications. If you want to keep traveling with me through moments that shaped humanity, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Time holds many stories that many would rather forget completely. I will be there to observe them with you. Until the next episode,